From attacks near the capital Bamako to armed clashes in the north, Mali has witnessed a series of violent episodes in recent weeks. Its path to restoring security seems to be on the wane. Does the responsibility for Mali's fragile state lie at the very top? When Assimi Goïta seized power after a 2020 coup, he promised to stabilize the country and return to civilian rule. But 5 years later, Goïta is now being criticized for the deteriorating security situation in Mali. The central, western and northern regions are increasingly being taken over by terror groups, with attacks on civilians by the Al-Qaeda-linked militant group JNIM on the rise. Just how did Mali get here? In 2020, military leaders led by Assimi Goïta overthrew the government of then-President Ibrahim Keïta, following weeks of protests against corruption and deteriorating security. Security dynamics further worsened as militant attacks increased between 2021 to 2022 in central and northern Mali. The junta government demanded the withdrawal of French and the UN's multidimensional integrated stabilization mission. The French left Mali in August 2022, while UN forces withdrew in December 2023. A report released by the conflict monitoring NGO ACLED attributes attacks on civilians in Mali between 2023 and 2024 to several actors. JNIM was accused of being behind 33% of the incidents. In September this year, JNIM blocked the entry of fuel tankers from neighboring countries, leading to severe fuel shortages. It also meant the closure of schools and businesses. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says as of 2025, 6.4 million people in Mali are in need of aid. That is 28% of the country's population. However, the humanitarian community is seek to assist 4.7 million of the most vulnerable due to funding issues. Now let's hear more from David Otto, who's the director of the Geneva Center for Africa Security and Strategic Studies. He joins me from London in the UK. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Matters. So, Otto, a lot has been happening in Mali in the recent weeks, but just based on the latest events, how would you assess the current situation in the West African nation?
I think the situation is quite dire. What we're experiencing, especially with the shortage of fuel and the blockage by Al-Qaeda's affiliate JNIM, is a clear indication that what the jihadist group is doing by kidnapping and also burning vehicles that are transporting fuel towards Bamako and the rest of the country is to instigate an internal insurrection by pressuring the military junta government to perhaps step down and perhaps for another internal discontent within the military. And this is not just exacerbating the humanitarian crisis that has been going on in Mali with the dire situation in terms of the economy, but it's also a demonstration that the jihadist group has been expanding its territory beyond the north and the eastern part of the country, now towards the west and the south, which is not a good news to the leaders in Bamako.
So, one would wonder, how did Mali get to this point? Because these are the same people that Assimi Goïta said he was going to fight them and ensure that the country is secure. How did this country get to this point?
You've got to remember that in 2020, when the military ousted, then President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, their main reason or justification, to put it that way, was that the then democratic elected government was unable and unwilling to deal with the level of insecurity, and they cited the likes of Al-Qaeda and JNIM, which is the same group which is now almost paralyzing the country. And then there was a popular support, but of course backed by the French rhetoric that led to the cutting ties. Mali cut ties with the French. They expelled the MINUSMA, which was the UN mission. They also expelled themselves from Operation Barkhane. They took away themselves from the G7 Sahel. And then established, as you know, they established the coalition of the Alliance of Sahel States, principally, dragging themselves out of ECOWAS. So the situation, has been that of kind of isolationism. But of course, the Malians have relied a lot on Russia and some of the Russian engagement, previously, from Wagner to now, what is, now a transformed Wagner to an expeditionary corps. So it's a very dicey situation, because on one hand, the military has promised that it will secure and safeguard the people, that it will improve on the economy. On the other hand, it is now seemingly, on a practical basis, struggling to deal with the insecurity to a point at which the jihadist group Jenim is now able to kind of put the country on a standstill, where even schools had to close down, hospitals unable to open, transportation on a standstill, and of course the people are experiencing a high cost of goods and services as a result of this fuel blockade.
All right. So, Otto, let's have a look at it this way. So, security challenges are immense. That is something that you have talked about. And resources are also limited. So how is the Malian troops dealing with the current tasks amid the gap left by the UN peacekeepers and international troops, owing to the fact that, the junta-led government took over the leadership of the country, seized power. They ordered French troops and the UN peacekeeping mission to leave the country.
Well, I think what the Malian government has done is that it has now, created a very good relationship with Russia, and the Russian, some say mercenaries, some say, these are bilateral relations between defense relations between Russia and Mali. But there is a lot of Russian troops within Mali, whether they're official or non-official troops. That's something that no one can tell. That's from the external angle. They've also established, as I mentioned, the Alliance of Sahel States, which is more or less like, it came as a result of what you call NATO Article 5. An attack on one would be an attack on all three states. And I'm talking about Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Perhaps, they have to create their own alliance, from a defense perspective to bolster each other's defense. But the problem with that is all three countries, Mali, as well Burkina Faso and Niger, are experiencing increasing jihadist issues. So it's therefore very difficult for one to assist the other because they are all affected. But from an internal point, from a Malian government perspective, I think what they've done recently is to, get more troops, to somehow guide the logistics and the tankers that, have to transport fuel into Bamako. The challenge to that, has been that even though those military protective units are there on ground, there has still been attacks, which has then undermined the response of the Malian government. So it's a very chaotic situation at this point in time.
All right.
But perhaps, I think the government is talking tough. They are saying that, everything is going to go back as normal. We've seen some schools resuming, some hospitals also reopening. But the situation is quite not dealt with.
All right. So at that point, then what role can ECOWAS do, owing to the fact that Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger left ECOWAS and formed their own alliance? At the same time, the African Union suspended Mali because of the coup. So talking about ECOWAS and the African Union, how can they be of help to this country that is currently facing a security crisis?
The African Union, to begin with, has expressed concern and has talked about the fact that there is need for Mali to be, to be assisted. But how that is going to work, has not been clearly established. There hasn't been some kind of an implementation plan. But I think the focus, for the African Union has been on humanitarian aid, or perhaps, elevating the current situation by remember, Mali is, it has about 7 countries that shares neighbors with it. Perhaps one way would be to request neighboring states to assist, in terms of providing some aid relief, maybe some fuel. Because of course Mali could receive fuel from Senegal, which is where the big problem is. Perhaps maybe Cote d'Ivoire could be one country that could also assist. But owing to the relationship between those countries, I don't see that it would be an easy task. From the ECOWAS point, ECOWAS, no longer has any say. Mali has cut ties with ECOWAS. They've left ECOWAS. So I don't see, ECOWAS doing anything, practical to help with the situation. ECOWAS, on the other hand, has said that their doors are still open. But with the establishment of the Alliance of Sahel states between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, I don't see a U-turn for Mali to go back and ask ECOWAS for any assistance. So I think the Malian military will fight it out. The government will dig in, and perhaps they would come up with a solution. Otherwise, it could lead to some kind of an internal insurrection, which is what I believe that the jihadists are instigating for.
Right. David Otto, the director of the Geneva Center for Africa Security and Strategic Studies, thank you for talking to us here on Africa Matters.
Thank you.
Staying in Mali, where Turkish defense companies have been showcasing the latest military technology. The 4-day Defense Expo in Bamako marks another chapter in cooperation as the two nations deepen their military ties to counter terrorism and boost security. Grace Kuria-Kanja reports.
The first ever Mali-Turkey Defense Expo opened its doors. Inside were 15 Turkish defense companies displaying various defense equipment, including surveillance drones, rockets, and ammunition. It comes at a crucial time for Mali. Terror-related attacks are on the rise. Human Rights Watch reported 326 attacks on civilians between January and November last year. 478 people were killed. And now the Al-Qaeda-linked group known locally as Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal-Muslimin, or JNIM, has the capital Bamako under siege, restricting fuel and supplies in and out of the city.
Africa is at the center of unprecedented security and geopolitical challenges that undermine its stability and hinder its development. Security should no longer be seen as an option, but as a necessity. Success against terrorism in Africa depends on an autonomous security architecture and collaborative efforts. We will not retreat in the face of terrorism. We will resist and eradicate it.
Have learned to better defend our interests, to be less dependent on those who want to impose their will on us, and to work with those who are willing to respect us. This is what guides strategic cooperation between Mali and Turkey.
With Turkey positioning itself as a reliable partner in Africa, it is perfectly placed to provide strategic and hardware assistance to Mali in its fight against terrorism.
We are proud to deepen our defense and security cooperation with Mali, just as we have with Niger, Burkina Faso, and many other African countries. In addition to the defense industry, we aim to develop relations between the two countries in a number of areas, including education and trade.
According to Mali, the fair, which has brought together government officials, military experts, and defense companies, will build a more secure, sovereign, and resilient Sahel region of North Africa. For Mali, this Defense Expo was an opportunity for the country to build a strategic partnership with Turkey and acquire its state-of-the-art military hardware. Grace Kuria-Kanja, Africa Matters.
Still to come here on Africa Matters.
I'm Diana Iriza, and as you can see here, these robots were used during the COVID-19 pandemic to monitor patients. They're now being used for children, for speech and language therapy, and they're also being used to introduce coding to students. All this reveals how the country is putting robots at the heart of its technological future.
Now, young people in Rwanda learning how to code, build, and dream through robotics. Diana Iriza visited a school in Muhanga district where students are hoping to shape the country's future, one robot at a time.
In a classroom at Bright School in Muhanga, Prince Isezerano Shami is learning to build more than just robots. He's building a dream.
I use tablets so to make research. They tell me that you need to focus on your studies to get in boarding schools. Don't spend more time in research.
The latest government survey shows that about 2 million Rwandans over the age of 15 are computer literate. And people in urban areas are 4 times more likely to be computer literate than those in rural areas. Technology access usually starts and ends at school, but here, through the school's Lego Robotics program, students are discovering a world far bigger than what they imagine.
When I started here, all the children wanted to be drivers of taxis, or perhaps farmers or mothers. And those were their only career goals. And now they say engineers and doctors and programmers and researchers, and a whole field, a whole new idea of what's really happening in the world has come to them because robotics has added that extra amount of inspiration.
But the journey isn't without challenges. The robotics kits Prince and his team need for international competitions in February haven't arrived yet, putting their training on hold. According to the 2050 Global Innovation Index, Rwanda has been ranked as the 10th in the sub-Saharan region and the first in its income group, reflecting how policy and education and technology is driving progress. From healthcare robots to automation farming to smart delivery service, this shows how the country is putting technology and AI at the forefront of its 2050 vision. That's the country's development blueprint that aims to become a high-income, knowledge-based economy using innovation, robotics, and AI to drive growth and improve lives.
We, in the industry, start with high-risk sectors. One is to think of the mining sector, because there is not that we are going to take people's jobs, we are actually saving lives, especially if you send a robot to do the general inspection of a tunnel. Second is the health sector, especially with these trends of epidemics, of outbreaks. So that way, some of our robots are at the Marburg Command Center because we are trying to find a solution around Marburg when it was here last year.
And it all begins in classrooms like these, where robotics is already reshaping what's possible now and the future. Diana Iriza, Africa Matters, Muhanga, Rwanda.
Now, South Africa has launched Africa's first oral cholera vaccine clinical trials. The trials also take the country closer to manufacturing its first vaccine from scratch in over 50 years. Health experts have described the move as groundbreaking for the African continent. Tuso Humalo reports from Johannesburg.
The trials may just be starting, but South Africa's health minister already says there is much to celebrate. Aaron Motsoaledi met with the team testing the oral cholera vaccine clinical trials at the Baragwanath Hospital in Johannesburg. He says this is a significant step in advancing Africa's vaccine self-reliance and capacity to respond to infectious diseases.
This is indeed a momentous day. For the first time in history, a vaccine ready for pivotal clinical trial has been developed, produced from start to finish, right here in Africa and on South African soil.
Representatives of BioVac, a South African-based biopharmaceutical company behind the manufacture of the vaccine in trials, are also over the moon.
It's the first time that we have our own regulator scrutinizing a locally made vaccine from our facilities where it was manufactured, what we call drug substance, which is the first. South Africa has never had drug substance capability. Drug substance, that's where you really do the actual raw ingredients.
Once speeches were done, it was now time to demonstrate how the trials will be carried out. Glenda Gray, the lead scientist conducting the clinical trials, says phase 1 will determine whether the manufactured vaccine can prevent cholera.
This is a groundbreaking trial for many reasons. One of the biggest reasons is that this is the first time we've made a cholera vaccine, an oral cholera vaccine, or in fact any vaccine on our continent end to end.
It will then be expanded to more people of different age groups and conditions. Results are expected by the end of next year. Those already participating in the trials say they already feel safer than before.
I decided to be part of the clinical research so that I can prevent myself from cholera if this pandemic comes, so that I know that when the pandemic hits, I'm healthy. I've taken the vaccine.
Africa struggled to get vaccines at the height of the COVID pandemic. Many say South Africa's move could encourage more of the continent to start investing in manufacturing their own vaccines. Tuso Kumalo, Africa Matters, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Zohran Mamdani scripted an extraordinary chapter in American politics by becoming New York City's youngest mayor in over a century. The 34-year-old was raised in Uganda, spending time in the newsroom and playing football and cricket. From Kampala, Darren Alan Cheyune met with some of those who held Mamdani's hand in life and now brings us this story.
Richard Tuwanje has crafted a career in the performing arts for more than 20 years. In 2015, he was part of the cast of The Queen of Katwe, directed by Mira Nair. Mira's son, Zohran Mamdani, supported Richard during one of the scenes, and unexpectedly a decade later, a photo of the two actors from the film set is trending on the internet.
That particular picture, he wanted a picture with me because then I had appeared on TV as an actor in a TV series, actually about 2 TV series by that time. And I'm part of a comedy show that happens every week. So then he wanted a picture. He was a 24-old year guy at that point. 24, 23, around thereabout. Now, if you ask me, I would compose that picture differently. Yeah, I would be standing and the mayor of New York would be seated. It is I who has a picture with the mayor of New York now.
Zohran Mamdani was born in Kampala and over the years explored different dreams, including writing for an independent local daily newspaper here when he was 16. It is in this space that Zohran Mamdani sat and honed his writing skills over a 12-month period. Most of his articles were about football and cricket, which greatly improved his thought processes. Only 2 of Mamdani's close former colleagues remained in the newsroom, and they vividly recall his work enthusiasm and love for English football club Arsenal's ex-striker Thierry Henry.
Zohran Mamdani was a wide-eyed, unassuming young man, a very good persona with a character that is an affable one. Many would have loved him, but he wanted to do more, and more is what he's done at the end of the day.
His path to the New York City Hall has been greatly shaped by his father, political science academic Professor Mahmoud Mamdani. Part of the Ugandan ruling class, however, now has mixed feelings of the Mamdanis, as admiration of the son's rise is shadowed by the father's new book critiquing the current leadership.
I just hope that our leadership is tolerant enough to, one, recognize that the young Mamdani has raised the flag high for Uganda, and Uganda will always associate with his successes.
US President Donald Trump has already clashed with Mayor-elect Mamdani's democratic socialist agenda, which seeks to lower the cost of living in New York City.
I will be sworn in.
But with a journey of resilience from Kampala, Mamdani hopes to withstand critics and successfully bring a new era to America's largest city over the next 4 years. Darren Alan Cheyune, Africa Matters, Kampala.
That's our show this week. Share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode and leave your comments on our Africa Matters YouTube page or on X. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Brenda Zeda Radido.